Good morning and welcome, everyone. I'm Matt Lisle, and this is day 7 of the Coffee with Coach Lisle show, where I help parents, coaches, and athletes around the world tackle the challenges of life and athletics. Again, thank you for tuning in this morning, bright and early, 7 a.m. Pacific time, live on Facebook. Again, just wanted to thank everybody who's been tuning in the last week and a half. We've had almost 200,000 views in the last week and a half. Just been a really great engagement and great. So good morning to everyone. And we've covered so many great topics. If you always want to go back and you can check out our topics on Facebook and also at youtube.com/Coach Lisle. And like I said yesterday, if you prefer to watch this show or just listen to this show, not live, you can go to Apple and Spotify and it's on podcast. So good morning, everyone. Good morning, Michael. Thanks for tuning in again. Appreciate seeing you. It's good to see these familiar faces in these mornings. So again, I appreciate that. Today we're going to get a couple things I want to talk about. Continue to be interactive. I want to hear from you this morning. So the question of the day for you guys is, at what age did you quit playing sports? At what age did you quit playing your favorite sport? So, I grew up playing baseball, played a little bit through college, and as I got older, football ended up being my favorite sport. So I'm asking you guys, at what age did you finally quit playing your favorite sport? Was it 12 years old, 16 years old? Did you get to play through college? I'm curious, and I want to hear from you guys about your experience and how long you played. If you're just tuning in, we've had some goals for this show every morning, which has been really fun. Our goal has been 300 likes, so hit that like button if you're just tuning in. And we're trying to get to 75 shares. Our record is 71 shares on Friday. We got over 50 yesterday, but today we're trying to get 75 shares. So if you like this show, you think it's providing some value out there to parents and coaches and athletes, hit the share button. And if we get to over 50 shares today, if we get over to 50 shares, again, I'm going to send you a signed copy. We're going to do a little lottery at the end. I'll pick a random person to send a signed copy of my book, Dear Coach. So good morning, everyone. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I love seeing it. Good morning to Jason and Samantha. Good morning, Darren. Good to see you guys. Jason said he kept playing until he was 19, then he tore his ACL. John got to play his sport until he was 18. Tyler says, I quit playing baseball at 13, wasn't good at it, then picked up tennis in high school and played that my junior and senior year. That's pretty cool. Good morning, Lauren. Good morning, Jeannie. Jeannie says, 38, post-college, coaching, and after a second child. That's great. So, again, the question of the morning, if you're just tuning in, was when did you last play organized sports as a kid? When did you stop playing? Was it high school? Was it 14 years old? And what sport was it? If you you loved baseball, but you stopped playing at 14 years old, or you loved football and you played through high school, or you played into college. This morning, I just want to hear from you guys. What was the last age that you played an organized sport as a kid? And some of us have gone back into organized sports, slow pitch softball, indoor soccer, and my mom runs triathlons and marathons. My mom is in her 60s and still runs marathons, triathlons, Ironmans, all that stuff. So that's pretty cool. Let's talk about our morning a little bit. Today we're going to talk about the Coach Lisle Book Club. I want to share with you guys some books that have helped shape me as a parent and have helped shape me as a coach in my career. In our Dear Coach segment, we're going to talk about an overbearing parent. Shocking there, I'm sure. And our main topic of the day today is going to be about stress and anxiety in youth sports and how to deal with failure. As always, we'll wrap up the day with some Q&A, and then I want to end our show today with some advice for parents and young coaches. So as you're getting settled in today, I want you to think about what questions you're going to have. I want you to hit that like button. We're going to get over 300 likes today. We're going to get over 75 shares. I know, because you guys are the best listeners and the best watchers around, so I appreciate that. I want to get started with a new segment called Coach Lisle's Book Club, where I just share a little bit about the books that have shaped me and I've learned about me. So I just thought it would be a really cool idea just talk about books and know a lot of you guys are doing it too. So good morning. If you're just tuning in, hit that like button, hit that share button. I'm asking you guys, when was the last time or what age did you quit playing organized sports? Was it 14 years old, high school? Did you get to play in college a little bit? I'm curious to hear from you. So let's talk about the Coach Lisle Book Club. I just thought it would be a good idea to share some books. I know I get a lot of questions regarding, hey, what books could I be reading? And I wanted to share a little bit of those today. So as we get into that, let's talk about the first book. So the first book is called Relentless. It's about being from good to great to unstoppable by Tim Grover. And I want to read this to you. It says, the word relentless is used in sports to describe the most intense competitors and achievers imaginable. Those who stop at nothing to get to the end result. In sports, being relentless is measured by victories and trophies and championships and rings. In real life, being relentless is a state of mind that can give you the strength to achieve, to survive, to overcome, to be strong when others are not. The ability to be relentless is in all of us. And if you've been around me in my coaching career, and every year when I coach teams, we always have a word. Relentless has always been the word for me. The relentless pursuit for me has been something to me. So this is a great book to teach you about being relentless in life. And I just think that's really cool. And I think it's something that we can really, really like. So that's the book, first book in our book club. Check it out if you get a chance, by Tim Grover. Relentless just teaches you how to be good, go from good to great to unstoppable, and it's a book that has helped me out a lot as well. And the next book, the second book today, and we'll talk about two books today, is Chop Wood, Carry Water: How to Fall in Love with the Process of Becoming Great by Joshua Metcalfe. And I can tell you this book is an incredible book. It's a short read, but it teaches you, we talk about trusting the process, but it teaches you how to fall in love with the process. This powerful story of one boy's journey to achieve his lifelong goal of becoming a samurai warrior brings the training to be a clutch curriculum to life in a powerful and memorable way. And some things you're going to learn in this book. How to develop a heart posture of gratitude, huge. How to use the biggest challenges as a training ground for greatness. Why the process is more important than the goal. I know for a lot of us, some of us have already learned that lesson. Why comparison is the thief of joy. I can tell you right now, that's one of the biggest lessons of this book, is to teach you why comparison is the thief of joy. And how to develop a growth mindset. This book teaches you how to develop this growth mindset, to not get stuck with this fixed mindset. And then also, why talent is more of a curse than a blessing. And so there's just so many valuable stories and lessons in this book. So I want to recommend those two books this morning, and I thought it would be really helpful to you guys. So again, good morning, everybody. I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're just tuning in, we're trying to get to 300 likes today, so hit that like button. We're trying to get to 75 shares. And the question of the morning for you guys that I wanted a response from was, when did you last play organized sports? How old were you when you kind of hung up the cleats? Was it 13, 14 years old? Was it high school? And what sport was it? Okay. Rachel says she was 15 and it was track when she stopped doing it. Jeannie says, I was a runner, still am a runner, but I'm done racing. Ryan says 2004 to my last collegiate game. That's great. So, and then Keith says baseball through high school. And 2 years of junior college, and I continued in adult leagues until my late 20s. I miss it. Yeah, and I can tell you, if somehow you're a young listener watching in this morning, somehow you woke up early, or you're on the East Coast listening in, I can tell you right now that all of the 30, 40, 50-year-olds that are watching right now, they would tell you that they love and they really miss the game a lot. So let's talk a little bit about today's Dear Coach segment. Okay, Dear Coach segment is one of my favorite segments. It's where I talk about my book, Dear Coach. We read a story from it. It's always really funny. You can search for it on Amazon. It's been moving up the ranks. It's in the top 20 right now in Kindle books in sports. So I appreciate all the support, those who have gone out and bought it. So cool to see it going up the bestsellers list. It's been slowly but steadily going up the bestsellers list, and I appreciate all of you that have done that. So thank you. Every day I read a story or an email from parents and try to give some commentary about this. And so I just thought it would be really helpful today to share another great story about an overbearing parent. So let's talk about that a little bit in today's Dear Coach segment. So I'm going to read you this email from this parent who here says, Dear Coach Lisle, a parent emailed and asked me to send him a text message every day after practice with how his son, a 9th grader, did at practice and what he needed to work on. Apparently, his son didn't communicate that to him when he got home. In the same email, he also requested that his very gifted son never be paired up with bad players on the team because his child was going to play in college and the other players on the team likely weren't. Sincerely, rolling my eyes. Amazing. I mean, what an amazing email for a parent to send. And I thought, if you've got my book, you've seen sections like this called Coach Lisle's Commentary. And so I want to talk about this a little bit. I want to read to you what my response is in this situation. So when I get emails like this from parents, involving parents, coaches, and players, I try to lead with empathy. What are they feeling? What do they know about their situation? And what's the best outcome for the parent, coach, or player? I'm guessing the son in this scenario doesn't like coming home from practice and immediately debriefing with dad. I know a lot of you probably in that same situation when you were growing up. You didn't want to walk through the door and to get interrogated. Sometimes kids need space and time after school or practice or a game before they want to talk about it. I'd like to see dad give his son some space after practice or ask why talking after practice is so hard. He might discover another reason, and that's what good parents do. As for the second part of the email, I'd suggest that playing with less talented teammates provides an opportunity to become a great teammate. Great players help other players get better. This isn't an obstacle, it's an opportunity. And I hope you guys were able to kind of learn a little bit in that story about that parent and what was going on there and how important it is to understand and have empathy with our kids. Again, that kid might not have wanted to come home and talk about it. Maybe he wanted to talk about it a few hours later, but when you walk in the door, that happens. So good morning, everyone. If you're just tuning in, we just finished our Dear Coach segment. I shared a story just about, we'll call it an overbearing parent. And we talked about the Coach Lisle book club this morning. If you're just tuning in also, I talked about it a little bit. The Coffee with Coach Lisle show hit iTunes on yesterday. It's now on Apple Podcasts. It's on Spotify Podcasts. So if you prefer to listen in the car while you're driving or later on while cleaning the house or just not at 7 a.m. Pacific time, you can always go back and listen to it on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, and I appreciate you guys doing that. So good morning, everybody. We're trying to get to 300 likes today. I'm looking up at the scoreboard right now. My scoreboard shows 120 likes. We're trying to get to 75 shares. So if you like this show, you're just tuning in, hit that like button, hit that share button if you really like this show, and I would appreciate that. And again, if we get to 50 shares, I'm going to send one person, a signed copy of my book, Dear Coach. We hit it 3 times already in the 7 shows we've had, which is incredible, and I've got those in the mail out for some people right now. So hopefully we can get to that 50 shares, and I'll get that book out to you guys. So again, I appreciate that. Our main question this morning for everyone was, when did you quit playing sports? At what age did you quit playing organized sports? Some of you said, I played into my 40s and 50s, and some people said, Larry said, I stopped playing softball at 45. I still coach 12U softball. So, again, a lot of us never gave it up at all, right? And a lot of us are sharing what years. Rick said he played till he was 19 in volleyball junior college. And that's awesome. So a lot of us got to play when we were older, and that's really great. And I think a lot of people who got to play when they're older, they love to give back and they love to coach back. So again, and thank you guys for hitting that like button. That's really awesome. We're at 162 right now. I want to get into our main thing today. Our main thing today is going to be about stress and anxiety and dealing with failure. Okay, so I want to really talk about this a lot today. It's going to be a longer segment, and I want you guys to start thinking about your questions and comments regarding this, and I think it'd be really helpful for a lot of kids and parents out there. So the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to all this is I want to talk about failure. Let's start with failure. And the best advice I can give to you guys is to talk about it. Talk to your kids about it. Talk about failure. If you never talk about failure, it can be it can make it more difficult. An analogy that I like to give a lot of kids in my camps is that, failure in sport is part of the learning process. Okay, it's part of learning. We get better from failure, and we have to understand that our expectations are lower. And as much as our kids want to go 4 for 4 every game, they want to score 50 points in basketball, they want to score 5 goals in soccer. It's not realistic to have those expectations. Failure is part of it. In baseball and softball, we talk about All-Americans, people who make the Hall of Fame. They succeed about 40% of the time. 40% of the time. They fail 60% of the time. So I tell my kids, and I stole this from a friend of mine named Jimmy Kalitis, who's the head softball coach at UAB. He used to tell our players, I want to give you an analogy to think about failure. When it comes to doctors, and you go to a doctor and you say, hey, you know what, I need to have knee surgery. And you got to pick a doctor out. What percentage would you want that doctor to be good at his job? And you're thinking, well, 100%, 99.9%. Same thing if you needed a lawyer. You need a lawyer to defend you or go to court. You want that lawyer to have a high success rate. 40% probably is not going to cut it. The same thing with school. We talk about our schools. I'm really really proud of my sophomore son. Just finished his sophomore year. Got a 4.0 this year. That's awesome. But in school, you need 90% to get an A at most schools. Okay, you need a 90%. So we have this expectation, hey, we want to get to that 90%. If we kept that same expectation of 90% in sports from a success standpoint, we're in a lot of trouble. We're going to have a lot of kids dealing with failure. And, I know that if you're my age, parents, you recognize that stress and anxiety and failure, the world in 2020 is so much different than it was 30, 40 years ago. It's just different. Kids nowadays, they have all the information in the world at the palm of their hands on their phones, on Google. They can find everything out. Whereas we were kids, we got our information from our parents. We got our information from the news if we ever watched it, and our friends, but we didn't have access to the information and what's going on in the world like we do today. And because of that, it causes a lot of stress and anxiety. And I think that parents just really need to have some empathy around that. So, I tell a lot of our athletes, you got to understand the best athletes in the world fail. I talk about Mike Trout in baseball. Mike Trout has won several MVPs. He's the best player in baseball, and at the end of his days, he may become the greatest player of all time. There have been stretches in Mike Trout's career where he has gone 0 for 19. 0 for 19. That's an incredible slump right there. 0 for 19. Best player in the world. Won the MVP that year. He went 0 for 19. And he might go down as one of the greatest players, and if not the greatest player of all time. So talk to your athletes about these things. Let them know that the best players in the world fail. I've seen Steph Curry fail. I've seen Tom Brady fail. I've seen Michael Jordan fail. The best athletes in the world fail. And so give them that understanding. One of the things that we talk about when it comes to failure is recovery time. You get to have some recovery time. So you get to set a time limit and figure out in your sport what is the time limit. In baseball and softball, that time limit's around 20 to 30 seconds. That's the time between plays. It can be the time between in the dugout, between innings. Figure out for you what is that time limit. So 20 to 30 seconds. You can get frustrated. I tell our athletes, if you're in the dugout and you need to go to the locker room, we have a locker room right by, and you just need to yell and scream and get it out, you can do that. Obviously, on the field, you can't do that as much, but you've got to set a time limit of how long you can get frustrated. In soccer and basketball, you don't get that much time. You don't get to have that much time, so you got to figure out what's the time limit of failure and allow them to have a little bit of time to deal with that failure. And then you've got to have some type of a flush mechanism. A flush mechanism is letting it go. In baseball and softball, I know athletes that their flush mechanism when they're batting is to scrape the dirt in the batter's box. They scrape it, they flush it. I know fielders that look down at their glove, kind of wipe it. Or Evan Longoria, third baseman, who may end up going into the Hall of Fame at the end of his career. He would say that his flux mechanism was to look at the foul pole, the left field foul pole, because every field has a foul pole. And he would look at it, take his time, whatever that time period needed to be, 10 seconds, flush it, and then go back to the field. He wouldn't go back to the field until he had flushed it. So having some type of a mechanism that allows us to know, and it lets our teammates know, it can let our coach know, hey, coach, I'm good to go. I flushed it. My mind is right. So have some type of flush mechanism. And we got to teach our kids. We've got to continue to teach our kids to learn from failure and to embrace it. Embrace failure. And I don't... I think as a young athlete and as a young coach, I didn't understand that concept. As an older coach, I have learned that I love failure. I love how hard we make practice being. We fail in practice a lot because we learn from it and we embrace it, and we know that because we failed, we gave our best effort and we failed, that we're going to get better on the other end. So, parents and coaches, how can we support failure and embracing it? How do we support this? The first thing to do is give your kids permission to fail. And that has to be verbalized. You got to communicate that. They have to understand that coach is not going to just take me out of the game every mistake I make. If I make an error, on basketball, I make a mistake on defense, coach is not going to just pull me out of the game. You've got to give them permission to fail. Understand that when they fail, that you're not going to hammer them. Parents, the same thing when they fail on the field. This happens. I've seen this in flag football. I've seen this in baseball. It's like, you got to catch that. Come on, when they make a mistake. And all I'm thinking in my mind is, that kid knows he made a mistake. He's not happy about it, and all you're doing is making it worse. The analogy that I love when I see it, like 9 and 10-year-old kids, when they're pitching, on the mound, they're first start pitching, and all of a sudden you hear, and the kid's throwing like 10 straight balls, and you feel bad for this kid. And all of a sudden you hear from the stands, or a dad is like, come on, just throw strikes. And it's like, man, what do you think that kid is trying to do? Like, what do you think that kid's trying to do? And so for me, giving them permission to fail is the biggest thing that I see with kids, and I want them to understand that you got to give them permission to fail. Let them know that you're not going to hammer them and that you love them no matter what. If they make 4 errors in this game today, on the ride home, you love them no matter what. And so you've got to communicate that love. You've got to communicate the permission to fail. And then, if you're a teammate, if you're a kid listening in right now, the best way that you can support your kids with failure is when they make a mistake. Let's say, I'll give you a good example of baseball or softball. You're the pitcher, and an infielder makes an error, and you're frustrated. You're mad. You're thinking, man, should have had that play. I wish they would have made that play. That's frustrating. I totally get that. But if you point at that player and say, hey, we got you next time. Don't worry about it. Shake it off. Same thing as a coach. When the player makes an error or misses a layup in basketball, if you say, hey, don't worry about it. We got you. Team's got you. We got your back. Or, hey, you'll get the next one. When you pour in that positivity, when you pour in that support and that backing, what kind of confidence do you think that athlete's going to have the next time that he gets an attempt or she gets an attempt to make that free throw or hit that penalty shot or to pitch that ball or get a pop-up in the infield? And so when you believe in them and let them know they believe in them, and your teammates have your back, and you talk about this in a positive way. Now, if you have, let's say it's a second baseman and they dropped a pop-up and they've dropped 3 or 4 pop-ups in the game, when you get to next practice, we're going to practice on pop-ups, okay? We're going to practice pop-ups. There's no other way around it. We got to get better at that thing. But mistakes happen. Errors happen. Don't hammer them. Support them. Know that they have their back. So that's talking about failure. So I want to just kind of talk about failure for a little bit regarding that. Now I want to get into stress and anxiety, because to me, that's one of the biggest issues coming in sports today. I would say I've dealt with it a lot as a kid and even as an adult, and I know a lot of us are, even in 2020 with everything going on in the world today. Stress and anxiety is at an all-time high. And I've read a lot of studies around this. One of the things I thought was pretty incredible is that they did a study on baseball players, and the baseball players' average heart rate was 170 beats per minute while at bat. 170 beats per minute. Now, I'll tell you guys, I work out 5 days a week on my Peloton, and my heart rate gets up to about 170, and I'm dying. 170, I'm dying. For most of us, our resting heart rate is like 65, 70 beats per minute, maybe lower for an athlete. And it says that a study says that the average heart rate of baseball players beats per minute while at bat is 170. So you can see right there the anxiety and stress of being up to bat, no matter what your age, is pretty incredible. And so you just got to understand nowadays too that adolescents and high school kids. We talked about this already. In 2020, there's so much stress going on. There's so much in this world right now. And when you add the stress of athletics, the pressure that parents are putting on each other here, it's just an incredible. So we've got to find a way to combat stress and anxiety. And I want to help you guys find ways to deal with stress and anxiety. If you're a younger athlete or a parent or a coach of a younger athlete, I've read a lot of studies, and there's a lot of studies that say that some athletes can burn out as early as 9 or 10 years old. I mean, I don't even understand how this is possible. For most kids that are just getting started loving a sport at that age. Some of us started playing organized sports at 5, 6 years old, but a lot of us kids don't play till 9 or 10. So if they're getting burned out at 9 and 10 years old, we're in trouble. We're doing something wrong. And so, I would just encourage you guys, really think about that. Think about how that is. And it says right here that one study showed that players often feel pressured by coaches to play while injured. Each year, there are 2.6 million emergency hospital visits for young athletes from ages 5 to 24. 2.6 million emergency hospital visits for young athletes from ages 5 to 24. And studies show that players often feel pressured by coaches to play while injured. So, this can add to the stress. This can add to the stress and anxiety that players have. Is like, hey, I got hurt, but I'm afraid that my coach is going to yell at me or not, or going to punish me for being injured. And that's a big problem that we have. So, when it comes to stress, that's not a good thing. So, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about stress, anxiety, how to deal with failure. If you're just tuning in, hit that like button. We're trying to get to 300 likes today. My scoreboard shows 252 likes. We're trying to get to 75 shares. If we get over 50 shares, I'm going to pick someone at random to send you a signed copy of my book, Dear Coach. And again, we're talking about stress and anxiety, how to deal with that. We're going to go to our Q&A session in a few minutes. So think about what questions you might have regarding coaching, parenting, stress, anxiety, failure. We can answer anything we have here. So again, if we get over 50 shares, I'm going to send you a copy of my book, Dear Coach, Real Emails from Parents Behaving Badly on the Field, at Home, and Behind Their Computer Screens. You can find it on Amazon if you just search Dear Coach. And again, thank you to everybody who has been supporting this book over time. It's been climbing up the bestseller list, and it's in the top 20 in sports and right now, which is really awesome, and I appreciate that very much from you guys. So getting back to our topic, talking about performance anxiety and stress. Kids, one thing I want you to understand is that your child may express fears and worry, for an upcoming game. So we're getting closer to game time. And I know some of you who have younger kids like me, you see they start getting nervous, they start getting worried. They might start talking about, they don't want to play. They might say, oh, I'm not feeling good. They talk about quitting the sport. And for me, whenever I hear these things, there's something more underlying. Sometimes they become irritable. Sometimes kids have trouble sleeping. If you notice, your kid before a game day, especially if they're playing tournament and they're young, they might have trouble sleeping at night. So these are signs to be aware of. To me, parents, I want to make you aware of the signs of stress and anxiety in our athletes and how we can do that. So, you might want to talk to your kid about wanting to quit their favorite sport. They may pretend to be sick or injured. They may even develop a physical symptom that stems from anxiety. So we got to talk to our kids about this. If you start seeing these signs, oh, I'm not feeling good, or I'm injured, my stomach hurts, or I'm not sleeping well, or I don't feel like playing today. I think most parents just say, suck it up. All right, go get your stuff on. Let's get in the car. Take that minute or two, that 5 minutes to talk to them and find out what's going on. Is it performance anxiety? Is it stress? And so I want to give you some tools on how to help your kids cope with performance anxiety. So number one is positive, mantras or positive affirmations. I tell our kids all the time before games, they got to come up with something in their head like, I can do this, or I'm strong, I've got this. Come up with something. One of my favorite sayings that I end this show with is "Win the day," and just thinking about just a positive mantra that your kid could have, and maybe it's something that you guys have together. Hey. Think of something that that the kid can repeat in their head at practice of the games, like "I believe in you, you can do it," some type of mantra. And then visualization is huge. I talk about visualizing a lot with our athletes. Start thinking about that, you hitting a home run, hitting that free throw to win the game, making that soccer penalty goal shot. Start visualizing having success. Kids think about all their failures. Oh my gosh, I'm going to go 0 for 4 today. I hope I don't strike out. Oh, my coach is going to yell at me if I strike out. They get all these negative visions in their head. Let's talk about visualizing great things. Let's visualize having fun. How much fun we're going to have with our teammates today. And let's visualize hitting that walk-off home run to win the game. Let's visualize positive things. And when you do that and you match it with a mantra, it can take away a lot of the stress and anxiety. And talking about setting a goal, and setting a goal doesn't mean, hey, let's hit a home run today. That's not a goal. Okay. That'd be awesome if it happens, but hey, let's set a goal of being a great teammate today, or helping a teammate out. Hey, if you see a teammate down, they're depressed, or not playing well, let's make it a goal that you're going to pick up 2 teammates today. Anytime you see a teammate fail, or the goal today, I play, my 8-year-old son plays basketball. The goal of the day is to hustle 100% on defense. I'm going to be just crazy on defense, and I'm never going to stop. So that goal could be, hustle, or something that they actually could focus on. And you take that away. When you take the performance anxiety away from it and set a goal on a particular skill, it's really good. It's going to be like, hey, I'm going to do this, and it's going to be not stat oriented, but it's going to be skill or teammate oriented. The next thing that we talk about, and I'll tell you guys right now, my 8-year-old son, we practice this a lot. We practice it at bedtime. We practice it in his life when he gets stressed out. We talked about breathing. Just understand that the slower your breathing are, the slower your heart rate gets. Okay? And the slower the game gets for you, the slower your mind works, and the better it performs. We talked about just a few minutes ago that the average batter's heart rate is 170 beats per minute in the box. Let's get that down to a really comfortable number, and I promise you the performance will go up. So if you're not talking to your kids about breathing in stressful situations, we're in trouble, because that heart rate's elevating, their brains are getting crazy, and they're not settling down. It makes it really difficult to perform. But when we slow our breathing down, when we take deep breaths and we settle things down, the game slows down and we perform better. So talk to your kids about breathing. It's really important. I do breathing exercises with my 8-year-old. He breathes in really slow, and he pushes all that breath out. And I can tell you at bedtime, it really helps him to fall asleep, because it slows his heart rate down. It relaxes his body. So that's one of the things that we do. And for me, the biggest thing that I can give you parents regarding that stuff is to offer reassurance and unconditional love. Kids have got to understand that you love them no matter what their performance is, how many goals they score, how many baskets they get. You've got to give them love, and know that they have to know unconditional love is what you give them. That no matter what their performance is on the field or on the court, that you are going to love them no matter what, and it changes nothing about how you feel about them. I can tell you right now, a lot of you believe that you're already doing that. And I can tell you that a lot of kids that I talk to, they tell me that they feel like their love and appreciation from their parents stems from how well they do on the field. If they do really well on the field, their parent treats them a lot better. If they do really badly on the field, their parent treats them a lot worse. And I'm telling you this from experience of talking to young athletes. I've been coaching for over 20 years. I've coached at every single level. T-ball, Little League, travel ball, high school, college, Major League Baseball. I've coached at every level, and I can tell you that kids across the country have told me many times, my parent treats me better when I perform better, and my parents treat me worse when I perform worse. So parents, you've got to do your part with that. You've got to communicate, offer reassurance, and unconditional love to your kids. So let's get into our Q&A time right now. I'm going to set the shot clock for 10 minutes today. I want you to get your questions in. I appreciate it. If you're just tuning in, I want you to think about what questions for our Q&A session today. We're trying to get over 300 likes today. My scoreboard shows 296 likes. So if you're just tuning in, hit that like button. Hit that share button if you really like this show. I'm trying to get the show out to as many people as possible. If we get to over 50 shares, I'm going to pick one person at random to send a signed copy of my book, Dear Coach, in the mail. I'll get it out in the mail today. We're trying to get to over 50 shares. Our record is 71 shares on Friday show. Yesterday we had 51 shares, so we're trying to get to that 75 shares button. And today we talked about anxiety and stress, dealing with failure with our student athletes. And now we're going to go into our Q&A session. We've got 10 minutes there, and then I've got a message for all you parents and young coaches out there at the end of our show that I think would be really, really important for you. So let's get into our Q&A time. Let's get that shot clock going. And I want you guys to get your questions in. So let's talk about that a little bit. Our first question of the morning comes from Sarah. Sarah says, my daughter plays at 110%. She is not afraid to get injured playing basketball. Is this a bad thing? How can I guide her? So playing with no fear is awesome, Sarah. I think that's a great thing of her. I think she has to understand, it might be a good conversation to understand, not about the injury in the sense of, going hard and making contact and getting hurt in that sense, but knowing her body, understanding pain. I tell our players all the time, as you get older, your body starts getting beat up. Our college athletes, the rehab of a college athlete is incredible. You should see how much rehab they do. I think that's something that a lot of kids don't see, a lot of parents don't see. Like, they take care of their bodies incredibly, from ice baths to massages to physical therapy. The rehab of taking care of their body is really important, and they do it every day. So my advice for your daughter is just make sure she's aware of, playing with pain. That's not a good thing. Having little sores and bumps and bruises, that comes with sports. And as you get older, you get more of them. But to me, that's one of the biggest things I think you could help her with. Larry asks, my youngest son struggles after a bad soccer game. My wife pushes him to talk after the game when he needs time to process. How do I convince her to let him process before she pushes him to talk about what happened? Maybe you guys could talk about having a rule, a 2-hour rule, 1-hour rule. It seems like that's obviously a challenge for your wife in the sense of wanting to do that. So figure out a rule for her, even if it's an hour. I would say 3-4 hours would be better. We talk about the 24-hour rule. That would be the best. But if you really need to, I would talk to her. Maybe let's just have a rule. From the time the game ends till, or maybe it's after lunch or after dinner or something like that. See if you can come up with something that would be really helpful for her on that. Lauren asks, how do you control your son being hard on himself? Sometimes negative thoughts, doesn't believe consistently. Lauren, I would tell you my best advice is talking about that. Why are you so hard on yourself? I talk to my son a lot about, buddy, you're going to fail at this. We had this conversation yesterday about video games. My son was trying to beat this level in the video game, and his level of frustration was incredibly high. And I'm thinking to myself, in my mind, I'm thinking, kid, this is a video game you're getting this upset about. And then we started talking about, hey man, it's hard. If you want success in something, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be tough. And you got to keep practicing. So you're going to fail. And that's okay. That's how we get better. If we were to succeed right away every time, we wouldn't be able to build up that strength and to be able to handle adversity. So we had a little talk about video games yesterday about just being able to deal with that. What does that look like? So, my advice for you on that is just to talk about, what is it that's causing you to do that? For me, I would be really curious, why they're doing that. And so Rachel asks, you stated the importance of breathing techniques. Would you recommend athletes to practice yoga or meditation? Absolutely. I can tell you right now, I would recommend every athlete, especially as they get older, yoga and meditation. I did a little yoga class last night for a few minutes after my Peloton ride. It kicked my butt. I'm probably the least flexible person on the planet, but I can tell you that yoga, meditation can really, really help in athletics and getting our minds right. So I think that's really good. Angel asks, what advice do you have for coaches trying to move up to the next level? This is an entire show of information, so I'm just going to give you a short answer today, Angel. My best advice for coaches who want to move on to the next level is to volunteer. Okay, a lot of coaches, they want to get paid. I can tell you right now, for the first almost 15 years of my career, I never got paid full-time for coaching. I got paid hardly anything for coaching. My best advice, if you want to move up to the next level, is find the next level coach, whether it's a junior college, a local college, and volunteer to do anything. Throw batting practice, help, around the field, anything you can do to help volunteer, build a relationship with that coach, so you might get some opportunities for coaching. So volunteering is the best advice I can give you like that. Bill asks, my son really struggles mentally and in results when he gets a bad mound. Any input to get him the right mindset? And again, I would just communicate with them, talk to them about failure, reassure them of your love, reassure them that failure happens at the highest level. Steph Curry, Mike Trout, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, these guys have failed, and they have failed on the big stage with millions of people watching. And I have failed as a coach many, many times in my career and as an athlete as well. So, for me, that's a tough one. Let's see. Jeannie asks, I used to be a successful high school coach for over 10 years. Done now. I have a 17-year-old son who doesn't care what mom says. I hear you on that. How do I get my teenager to believe or listen to mom? She's not a total idiot. So, Jeannie, I hope this encourages you a little bit. My kids, they don't want to listen to me about hitting. Okay? I've been a hitting coach at the major league level, the SEC, the Pac-12, Division I. I have a website called the Hitting Vault. That's probably the number one hitting website in the world, and my kids still don't listen to me about hitting if I work with them. So it's not just your son. Kids just sometimes need to hear it from somebody else. I don't know why it's like that. I wish I had an answer for that. But sometimes kids just need to hear another voice outside of their parents. I think because they hear their parents' voice with everything else in the world, do your chores, make your bed, put away the dishes. I think they don't want to hear it sometimes. So we've got 3 minutes and 41 seconds on this shot clock, and so let's keep it rolling. Hit that like button, hit that share button if you're enjoying the show this morning. Brad asks, what advice do you have for coaches communicating failure with kids? I coach my son's 8U travel team, and I see how much a strikeout or bad play affects the kids. So, Brad, at that age, talking to them about them, ask them, who is your favorite player? And they might say, hey, LeBron James. And talk to them about times that LeBron James fails. Understand that he's the best player in the world in basketball, one of the best, at least, of all time. And he fails all the time. And so find a way to relate to them failure, and also tell them it's okay. It's okay to fail and understand it's going to be better for them. So, any way that you can do that. I talk a lot about, failure, embrace it. Let's make it something that we get better at. So, Bob says, fantastic stream. Thank you for your insight. I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you very much. And so that's great. Ron asks, hey, Coach, how about some coaches who pressure kids to play because they don't necessarily believe they're injured? Yeah, this is a difficult one. I know that coaches, as a coach, I've been coaching a long time. At the college level, we have athletic trainers who make those decisions, so it helps kind of the coaches stay out of it a little bit. But I know coaches pressure their kids, especially if it's one of their best players. They pressure them, or they don't believe they're really injured. I can tell you in my experience, the world needs more athletic trainers. The world at the high school level, travel ball level, college level, we need to have more trainers who are tuned into injuries and talking about them. So for me, that's a really toughy one. If I'm a parent of a kid, you need to communicate to your kids. You need to speak up if you're injured, and understand the difference between bangs and bruises and little scrapes, but if you are injured, you need to stand up for yourself, and you need to talk to your kids about standing up for themselves and understanding what that takes to do that. So, for me, talking to them about that, do it. Okay, we got probably maybe one or two more questions this morning. Pablo asks, regarding the anxieties and failure, what tools would you recommend using as a tool to get it across to parents when they are the ones that push and create it for the kids? How will you paint that picture to them that is not the game, that it's them? So parents are probably the biggest reason why kids quit sports. Let's be very honest about it. Parents are the number one reason kids quit sports. The stress, the pressure that they put on them. Parents, if you've paid attention to anything I've said today, understand that if you want your kids to perform better, these are the things that help them perform better. Having a good mindset, having permission to fail, relaxation, pressure helps them to fail, and not in a good way. So parents, if you listen to anything I said today, understand that if you can give your kids all the tools that we talked about today, permission to fail, unconditional love, breathing, a mantra, they are going to perform better. And that's what you want. You want them to have success on the field. And so that's the best way to do that. So I hope, parents, you guys are listening to that. And I appreciate it. So good morning to everybody. Good morning, Forrest. Good morning. Thanks for everybody for tuning in this morning. We were trying to get to 300 likes. My scoreboard shows 400 likes right now. Such an awesome thing. I appreciate that very much. Bill said, I'm surprised you didn't mention Heads Up Baseball. A great book called Heads Up Baseball. Check it out. It's a great, if you're a baseball player, that's a great mental book. There's a book called The Mental Game of Baseball, The Mental Game of Hitting by Dorfman. That's really good too. So for me, those are some of the ways. So we run out of time for today's Q&A. I apologize if I didn't get to everybody's questions today, but I will get to it tomorrow. And if you're just tuning in, we're near the end of our show, but I want to end the show with some advice for parents and coaches, especially young coaches. And my advice is, parents and coaches, I want you to understand something. I want to share about my biggest mistake as a young coach. Okay, I want to share with you guys my biggest mistake as a young coach. My biggest mistake as a young coach is too much sarcasm and not enough empathy. Okay? It took me a long time to learn that coaches that show empathy can inspire athletes to give more effort and increase their confidence and deal with adversity better. Empathy, not sarcasm. And I can tell you right now, I know it's ingrained from my dad. Maybe it's once you become a dad, you become the king of sarcasm. But for me, up until 5-6 years ago, I used sarcasm in my coaching a lot, and I thought it was funny. And with players that I had really good relational equity with, maybe there's a little bit of, but I can tell you right now, when you're coaching youth athletes, high school, college, 8-year-old, there's no place for sarcasm in the game, okay? And I can tell you right now, it's very hurtful. It might be funny to you, but it's not funny to them. And empathy goes a lot further. So I want you guys, parents, if you're watching right now, coaches, if you're coaching a travel ball team, I want you to remember that this summer as you go on, when you're thinking about saying something sarcastic. Now, a lot of coaches, they push back to me on this sometimes. They say, hey, sarcasm is funny. My kids love it. I'm telling you right now, you might have a couple kids like that, but the majority of your kids hate your sarcasm. They take it personally. It's hurtful. And even though it sounds like lighthearted and funny to you, when you harp on something with sarcasm, they feel it deep down. They may kind of joke about it or chuckle about it, but sarcasm has got to go. And it's got to go in coaching. It's something that I have gotten better and better at. It's really difficult for me to do because like I said, I'm the king of sarcasm. I know many parents out there and many dads out there feel the same way. So get rid of sarcasm, focus on empathy, and you're going to get just better performance from your kids across the board. So, I had a lot of fun today answering your questions. I appreciate you guys hitting that like button. If you're still tuning in, hit that share button that we can get it out to more people. Tomorrow we're going to talk about coaching problem kids. Those kids that we labeled the problem kids. If you've ever watched the show Last Chance U on Netflix, there's going to be a little tie-in there. So we're going to talk about all those problem kids out there. So lastly, if you want to connect with me, If you want to connect with me on YouTube at Coach Lisle. Follow me on Instagram at Coach Lisle. You can follow me on Facebook at Coach Lisle, and again on Twitter as well. And I hope you guys can connect with me there. You can always ask questions, things like that. If you notice, my shirt today is from Baseballism. Shout out to Baseballism for incredible gear and their brand. So thank you guys. And you can always connect with me at my websites, CoachLisle.com, and my hitting website, thehittingvault.com. So now it's time to say goodbye, but I'll see you again tomorrow. Same time, same place. Now go out and win the day. Thanks, everybody.